I'm well aware that faux vintage Suke-style Crosley record players get a lot of hate. So how about something different? A faux vintage Suke-style Crosley radio. Just like its record-playing brethren, it isn't as old as it looks. Nor is it as durable as it looks. It looks like it's built to take a few knocks, but this one didn't, judging by the antenna that's broken off, the battery compartment that's taped in place, otherwise it falls out, and the loose parts rattling around inside it. According to the stickers on the bottom, it's the Crosley Model CR21, manufactured July 2002. Crosley named it the Traveler and called it a 1950s portable radio. As near as I can tell, Crosley was copying the styling of the Traveler 5019 radio, which is actually from the late 1940s. On their website they said, "Mini yet magnificent, the Crosley Traveler was specifically designed for those on the move. With this authentic reproduction, you can be sure that your music goes everywhere you go. Crafted after finely styled luggage, the Traveler serves as the perfect lightweight companion, secure enough to tote from one end of the globe to the other." It had the suggested retail price of $99.95, but you could get it for the special price of only $39.95. The easiest way to tell the difference between a true vintage radio and one that's just made to look vintage is whether or not it has FM. Now, of course, there were some vintage radios dating back to the 1940s which did have FM, but extremely few. You almost never see one with FM on it. They're 99.9% AM only, or AM and a combination of some other bands like shortwave and longwave. And looking closer, you can see the dial is marked in megahertz and kilohertz instead of megacycles and kilocycles. The hertz terminology didn't really come into use until the late 1960s and wasn't really universal until the 1970s. And of course, if this really was a vintage tube radio from the 1950s, it wouldn't be running on a 6-volt DC barrel jack power supply or 4 AA batteries. Tubes are much more power hungry and required larger, higher voltage battery packs. And in 2008, Crosley had an updated version of the Traveler radio with a fancier design on the speaker grill and an aux input jack on the rear. Before I invest any time and effort into fixing this broken battery compartment and whatever else may be broken inside, I want to see if it at least works. So it is connected, so that's good. I don't need to fix the wiring, but I want to at least see if it works. So I'll put in some batteries and see if it's functional. Okay. So which one of these is power? Well, I'm not hearing anything. Well, it turns out it is working. You just need to turn it up almost all the way to hear anything.
Much calmer wind. Michael Hill, WNYC News.
Thanks, Michael. 20 after 11, and happy early Father's Day. 20th, as we making well.
¿Te gusta que la activo 2 veces por hora?
Okay, that's FM. Now we flip the switch on the back, which is an inconvenient place to put it. And that's AM.
So awkward and crazy.
Right.
Those two obviously don't.
News show and
Okay, it's getting the Indian station. So it is working. Just some reason you have to keep turning and turning it up, and then you finally hear it. Well, I'm happy to report that all the pieces that were rattling around were just broken off pieces of the battery compartment, so that should be easy to fix. No damage to the circuitry or speaker. It has a 3-inch, 8-ohm, 1-watt speaker. Nothing special there. And the circuitry looks very similar to that Indian-made 5-core radio I reviewed a couple years ago. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this is that same Sony chip. Unfortunately, it's covered in wax, so I can't read the markings on it right now. And up in this corner are some unused circuit traces, including an output for a dial lamp, or maybe a tuning indicator LED, and a pair of unused transistors. Maybe this was designed to support a more powerful version with push-pull audio output transistors, while this one just uses the amplification built into the main IC. So let me try to remove that wax so we can see what it is. After scraping off the wax and cleaning it, the markings on the chip are very faint, but maybe you can just about make out that it's an Atmel U2510B. As expected, it's an integrated AM/FM radio tuner and audio amplifier on one chip. And when running on 6 volts and driving an 8-ohm load, as it is in this radio, it's good for about 400 milliwatts of audio output power. And I spoke too soon about not having to do any wiring repairs, because just as I was rotating things around, the positive wire broke off of the battery compartment. And you can see whatever kind of drop or hard impact this radio sustained caused all 4 plastic standoffs to break off the battery compartment. The battery compartment falling off must be a common problem with this radio, because I found one on eBay where it had completely broken off and come loose from the wires. I soldered the battery wire back on, and instead of trying to glue the plastic back together, I elected to secure the battery compartment in place with screws, washers, and nuts. So now it's going to have a few more exposed screws on the back, but big deal, it was full of them anyway. I tested those lamp terminals, and indeed, they were intended for a dial light, but I can see why they opted not to include one in this radio, because back in 2002, white LEDs weren't really a thing yet, and if they used an incandescent bulb, that would run down the battery pretty quickly. So that was really only intended for an AC-powered version of a radio using this circuit board. But I still don't know what's going on with this volume control potentiometer, because as I turn it on and start to rotate it, nothing, nothing, nothing. And finally, right about there, we start to hear some hiss from the speaker. And that's turned all the way up. So that's only like less than the last quarter of a turn of its rotation has any effect. Most of its range gives you completely silent output. So, I don't know what happened there. Don't see any signs that this was ever replaced. So it came from the factory that way. The last thing left to fix is the broken off FM antenna, although honestly it had pretty good reception just as is, but regardless, I should have something that'll fit in here. Just remove that screw and slide it out and slide a new one in. Well, I did find an antenna that fits and works, but unfortunately it's a bit too large. That's the most it goes down now, but it does work, so I think I'll keep it. I have no idea what this station is. It's on AM and it's playing this kind of music. Some kind of dance music.
Strong, and that will set me free. He gives me a smile in an ice cold glass. Said, "This one's on me, but I bet it's not the last." Then I took a sip.
Dead air.
Attention men, here's a great way to have more fun in bed and save money. If you want to take something like Viagra, they can give you a way to pay as little as $2.
And right into a commercial for a Viagra type drug.
These pills work for men to improve their performance and confidence.
800-531-1550. That's 800-531-1550. Let's get it started. Bang, bang, can you hear it coming? Bang, bang, can you hear it coming? With a revolution, are you ready? Here we come, there's no doubt about it.
And right from the last set of commercials, back into the dance music.
Hey there, fellow travelers. It's me, the Hotel Whiz. Before you go anywhere...
Well, I just missed it, but for the rest of the hour, they were just playing music with a couple seconds of dead air between each song. Then at the end of that last song, it just immediately cut to a ID of WPAT Patterson, which is a local station here in New Jersey on 9:30 a.m.
Cancellation fees.
And now it's back to more commercials.
For your free tax savings consultation, call this number right now.
And now the next program on that station is Tax Information Infomercial.
That's 800-350.
More of those commercials on it. So this is known as a time brokered station. Anybody can buy an hour of airtime and put on whatever they want on this radio station. And I think what happened is when they have an hour that is unsold, nobody has bought that hour for a program, they just play random music to fill it up. And that was some very unconventional music to hear on AM, serving as a filler for an hour of programming that nobody bought.
For a few years, but at some point hit a wall.
The selectivity on AM is actually pretty amazing. This is a local 770 New York station.
I'm surprised nobody's even thinking about this.
A disgusting piece of garbage. Cut 15, go.
That's 760 from Detroit. It's very weak, but I think that's 750 from Atlanta, Georgia.
Why, yes, of course. My father and
That's 740 from Toronto. 730 from Quebec.
Continue to hold the conversation.
And another local New York station on 710.
You know, I didn't want him to get too...
It's kind of crazy because...
Actual development, as most things do, if you want. Change up.
Leaning back! It's leaning back! Ya le pega en la parte derecha de la cadera. And what do you do?
Doors meaning like stores? Not just cover up. Grab your phone. Take them.
Reception is actually very good on FM. Well, there's the 1950s style radio playing actual 1950s, well, this may be early 60s, but you know, it's 1950s Elvis music on a 1950s imitation radio. Well, now it's all back together and working fine, aside from that weird volume control that has no effect for most of its range. Otherwise, works fine, has good reception on both AM and FM. Looks pretty nice, honestly. Not bad.